Hello, second graders. Today, Tuesday, for our grammar lesson, we're going to continue talking about verb tenses. Last week, we talked about the present tense, which is now. Yesterday in grammar, we talked about the past tense, which means that already happened. And today, we are going to be talking about the future tense, which is going to mean that the verb is going to happen or the action is going to happen soon. So let's get started. Time for a safari. So let's review. The past, we added an ED. So yesterday we talked about the net of ed, and if a verb already happened, we have to add an ED. Unless the verb ends in an E, like in bike or hike, then we just leave the E and add a D. Now, the present tense verb stays the same, or you have to add an S or sometimes an ES for most regular verbs in the present tense that happens. Sometimes for irregular verbs, we do have to change the whole word, but we're not going to worry about that yet. So most present tense verbs, we leave the same, or add an S, or sometimes we have to add an ES. Now, today, we're going to talk about the future tense verbs. And for a future tense verb, what we're going to do is add the word will before the verb. So we have to add that keyword will. So let's look at some examples. I walk. I is the noun, the subject. What is I doing? The verb is walk. So we're just going to leave walk the same because it's one person. Now, if it already happened, I'm going to say I walked. If it's going to happen, I'm going to leave the verb the same, walk, and I'm going to add the word will. I will walk. Now, let's look at this one. I smile. Now, the past tense word would be smiled, but it ends in an E, so I got to drop the E and add ED, or just add an E. I smiled. The future tense is I will smile. I will smile. I look. Now, the past tense would be I looked. The future tense would be I will look. Now, here's an example. We walk, present. He laughs. She wishes. See how we have to leave it if it's more than one person? Here, we have to add an S because it's one person. And on this one, it's one person, but we have to add an ES because it ends in an SH. Crawl is present. Future is will crawl. Mix, future tense would be will mix. And chase, the future tense would be will chase. All right, now we're going to skip this one because this one just adds an ED. We talked about that already. We're going to go and we are going to make, or I should say, we're going to check to see, is this verb future, present, or past? The children will make a fire. So the children is my noun. What are they going to do? Will make. So right there I see the word will. So I should think, that's going to happen. That's a future tense verb. I will take a picture. Is that future, present, or past? So I is my noun, my subject. What is I going to do? Will take. So that will tells me that's the future tense. And I'm right. I see a big rhino. Now, how do I make that the future tense? So I'm going to use my subject I, and I'm going to put the word will in front of my noun see. So I'm going to say I will see a rhino. I will see a big rhino. I'm sorry, I missed the word big. Big rhino. All right, we walk to the river. How can I make that so it's going to happen in the future? So I could add the word will again. We will walk to the river. And when I add that word will, it means it's going to happen soon. We walked very far. So this is the present tense. How can I make that present? We walk very far. So that one's just throwing in a practice of a present. All right. She steps in the mud. How do I make that so that's going to happen in the future? She will step in the mud. So I have to add that word will. And I don't want to leave the S on steps because it wouldn't make sense, to say she will steps in the mud. That wouldn't make sense. So make sure you read it and it makes sense. This safari is exciting. The past tense, that safari was exciting. We're going to skip that one because I forgot to take that out. We listen to the birds. How can I make that in the future tense? We is our noun, our subject. Listen's our verb, so we need to put the word will in front of it. We will listen to the birds. Now, we're going to change the sentences to the future tense. We ride in the Jeep. I miss my mother. She reads a book. I sing a song. We see wild animals. So on the first one, we're going to say we will ride in the Jeep. The second one will say I will miss my mother. The third one will say she will read a book. The fourth one will say I will sing a song. And the fifth one, we will see wild animals. So do you see how I added will in front of every verb? Okay? So I added will in front of all of those. All right, now we're going to practice this. So I would like you to get out your green grammar page number 62. And it looks like this. There's some kids sitting and maybe some adults or teachers with a book. And pause the video if you need to go get your green grammar. When you have your grammar page, would you nicely put your name at the top, nice and neat, please? And the first thing says, a future tense verb tells about an action that will happen. Will is the key. That's the word we need to know. In the future. The word will goes before the verb to make the future tense. Eric will rake the leaves tomorrow. So we're going to use will on this page before our verb. Now, down here, Mrs. Murphy is going to start it with you, but I want you to finish it. On this first section A, 1 through 6, you are going to write the future tense of the verb to complete each sentence. Now the verbs are at the end of each sentence in parentheses. So those are the words or the verbs you need to use. So we're going to do 2 of them together, but the rest you'll do on your own. Number 1 says, Ling and Maya blank at school next week. Now, my verb is help. And so I know I need to use help. But I need to use that key word will in front of it. So all of these are going to have will. If you want to write will in all of those, right away you can go ahead and do that. Now, the second thing I need to do is read it and double check to make sure it makes sense. Ling and Maya will help at school next week. Does it sound right? Does it make sense? Yes. So I have will, that means it's going to happen, and I have my verb help. And as you can see, your verb is over here. Okay? Pause the video if you need to. On number 2, I'll read number 2, and I'll do this one with you, but the rest you'll do on your own. They blank in the library. And in parentheses, I have the verb work. So I know I'm going to use work, but we're going to put it in the future. So again, we're going to use that key word, will. So look at this sentence. They will work in the library. Does that make sense? Yes, that makes sense. Now you're going to do number 3, 4, 5, and 6 on your own. Look at your verbs. Make sure you put will in front of there, and make sure it makes sense. Then down here, you're going to write one future tense verb from above in a new sentence. So you're going to create your own sentence. So pick one of these verbs up here. Mrs. Murphy will do an example. I'm not going to write it, but I will say an example. Mrs. Murphy can say, I will help the second graders. Or I will help my mom. Or I will help my sister. Or I could write a sentence, I will work on my grammar. I will work on my math. Okay? So you pick one of these future tense verbs, write a sentence, make sure you have capitalization, make sure you have the future tense verb will blank, and then make sure you have a period, and lastly, make sure it makes sense. When you're done with your green grammar page, make sure you keep it in a safe spot, and then you're going to hand it in on Thursday with your papers.